The purpose of this video is to show you how the fundamental research exclusion works. So what I've got on the screen here is the Export Administration regulations. That's the regulations that are promulgated by the Commerce Department. The Commerce Department is responsible generally for all exports. And you'll see here they have some carve-outs for other folks. So there's a carve-out for the State Department, which handles the ITAR, the International Traffic in Arms Regulations. There's a carve-out for the Treasury Department to handle its sanctions programs. And you'll also see there's a big carve-out that's for fundamental research. So we'll show you how you get to that point in this scope here of the Export Administration regulations. We'll talk about the carve-outs, and then we'll explain further how the fundamental research exclusion works. So now we're here on the main screen. This is, you see, this is Title 15. So this is 15 Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 734. And in this section, so in 734, this is the scope of the Export Administration regulations. So it tells you what is the full scope and what's subject to the Export Administration regulations, things that are not and are subject to it. So everything's subject to it, according to this part, except the following. The following are not subject to the EAR. So that's what I just talked about. So defense materials, those are governed by the ITAR, the State Department. You see those sections of the CFR referenced here. Trade sanctions, certain nuclear materials covered by NRC and DOE. Patent and Trademark Office also has its own very minute carve out. But let's get down to the big one that's not subject to the Export Administration regulations. Information, so we're in software. So we're talking about intangibles, information and software. See, this is OR. So none of these things are subject to the Export Administration regulations. So right here is the one we're interested in. Arise during or result from fundamental research. Okay. So that references this section 734.8, which I have pulled up already. So if it's fundamental research, arises from fundamental research, it is not subject to the EAR. That's virtually everything we do at the University of Idaho. But you might be asking yourself, what is fundamental research? Well, that's defined right here in the EAR. Fundamental research, technology or software, we're talking about intangible stuff that arises during or results from fundamental research. So fundamental research is fundamental research and is intended to be published. So you've got two parts here, fundamental research and intended to be published. And they've kind of discussed it backwards. So let's talk about this thing. What does fundamental research mean? Well, it's defined right down here at the very bottom. C, fundamental research. Research in science, engineering, or math, the results of which are ordinarily published and shared broadly within the research community, and for which the researchers have not accepted restrictions for proprietary or national security reasons. So we're talking science, engineering, or math, which is the kinds of subject areas where the types of technology that would be controlled would arise from. But we're saying if it's fundamental research in those areas, that is, that it's going to be ordinarily published and shared broadly, it's not subject to the EAR. Now let's scroll back up here and see, what is that? What is this part? Is intended to be published. Well, that's defined here. Really, the intent is in the research, it's the researcher's intent. But one thing you can look for to determine whether they've intended from the outset to publish it is that the researchers are free to publish without restriction. We at the University of Idaho typically get that included in the contract itself, a statement that they're free to publish. Now, there's a clarification here. Anyone who's done research is going to recognize that, well, I submit my publication for review, pre-publication review. Yes, pre-publication review does not destroy the fundamental research exclusion, so long as it's only to ensure that we've protected the right to protect that IP and their patent rights. See, patent, it's important, not trade secrets, but patents, it's important because if it's just a slight delay so that you can file for the patent. so that the IP will be protected. We're not saying that it's going to be kept secret. It's going to be shared with the world. We want to be able to make sure we have those rights. So that's the pre-publication can be, is so long as it's done solely to do that, or to make sure that there's no pre-existing proprietary information shared by the sponsor. So the sponsor, when they might share some proprietary information with the researcher. They want to be able to take a look at the publication, make sure that you don't inadvertently share their trade secrets. Okay, so there you go. So the EAR, that's the Commerce Department. The Commerce Department is responsible for oversight of all exports with certain carve-outs. Those carve-outs include one, a very important one, which is fundamental research. Fundamental research, science, math, engineering, intended to be shared broadly, not subject to a publication restriction, and pre-publication review, so long as it's to protect patent rights and to ensure that proprietary information isn't inadvertently included in the publication. That pre-publication review is not a publication restriction. All right, there you go.